President Obama says it's Washington's fault. That's his latest explanation for the sluggish U.S. economic recovery, and it has been tough going, as we all know. To take a look at the unemployment rate, back in January 2009, when Mr. Obama took office, it was 7.8%. Right now, it's just ticked up a bit, 7.9%. The percentage of Americans who are not working as much as they would like to, the so-called underemployment, well, in 2009, that was 14.2%. Today, up just a hair, 14.4%. The president blames the Capitol's dysfunction.
I bet most Americans are thinking the same thing right about now. Nothing will get done in Washington this year, or next year, or maybe even the year after that, because Washington is broken. Can you blame them for feeling a little cynical? That's the reason my jobs bill that would put 1 million more people back to work has been voted down by Republicans in Congress time and time again. It is the biggest source of gridlock in Washington, and has been over the last 3 years. Now, here's the thing. Remember, I told you this was a choice that we've got to make. Because what's holding us back right now is not that we don't have good answers for how we could grow the economy faster, put more people back to work. The problem is we've got a stalemate in Washington.
But this week, we also received the first estimate of America's economic growth over the last few months. And it reminded us that bad decisions in Washington can get in the way of our economic progress.
Well, the president blames Republicans, the Republicans blame the president. Who's really to blame? Both. Ford O'Connell, chair of the Forum PAC and the former outreach director for John McCain for president, and Joe Sestak, former Democratic congressman from Pennsylvania. Ford and Joe, welcome. Ford, let me start with you. You just heard the litany from the president. I mean, but after all, he is the commander-in-chief. He is the president in charge.
The president is the biggest obstacle to private sector job growth in America right now. He seems to think that we can tax, spend, and regulate ourselves to prosperity. And all the private sector is asking for is certainty. And because the president doesn't want to pass a budget, modernize entitlement spending, or even, work around everything, he right now is the big issue, and it's up to him to really take a long look in the mirror. I do agree with him that Congress has played a role in this, but he really needs to stop worrying about destroying Republicans and start worrying about growing the economy.
Joe, is that true? Is the president, is he the biggest obstacle, or is it the Republicans?
The president is the steward of the overall economy, but both leaders of both parties have to look themselves in the mirror, and they do. Look, there's two issues they have to focus upon, very pragmatic issues. The first is our star running back, small businesses. Just a few years ago, we used to have 36 new small businesses that create 60% of all new jobs for every 10,000 citizens. Today, we have only 18, exactly half new small businesses starting up each year. We should relieve small businesses of the regulatory and the tax costs because they're the ones that create jobs for the spectators in the stadium. Number two, the debt. Both parties should have said to themselves, look, we can do a principal compromise like the Simpson-Bowles Debt Commission said, where we know that we need $4 trillion in debt reduction, not this year, but over the next 8 years because our economy is still fragile. And the proof of that is last quarter, the Defense Department, our U.S. government spending of it decreased 22%. The impact was about 1.3% less growth in our GDP. There's a memo out in the Defense Department today where 1 month of furlough will be done for all civilians because, as Ford said, both parties can't come together on either the $1 trillion sequestration or the debt ceiling. They kick these problems down the road.
Well, that's the problem,
They need to be leaders now.
Well, Joe, that is true. But your point about small business driving the economy, what is the biggest impediment to small business growth? The $1 trillion in new taxes the president has proposed and put in over the last 4 years, and also Obamacare. Let's be honest, the Senate Democrats don't move without the White House's okay. And essentially, the president needs to pass a budget and get serious, honestly, about the debt and regulations. He actually has 6,000 new regulations on the EPA website that I promise you are going to hinder small business growth. All I'm saying is I do agree with you. Both parties are to blame. Congress is certainly to blame, but the president needs to take an honest look in the mirror and say we need to promote growth.
Where do we break this? I mean, like a running back, where do you go for daylight, as Vince Lombardi used to say? How do we break this gridlock?
Eric, if I could.
Joe, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I think we need to look at this in perspective. We know during the Bush era that there was more EPA regulations and other regulations passed in the last 4 years than the first 4 years of President Obama's tenure. Now, the real issue is this. What small businesses want is access to capital. We have $4 trillion in our banks and our corporations that aren't being spent because they say there's uncertainty about whether Congress can get together with the president to resolve our issue. And so, therefore, we need to have Congress come together and stop finger pointing at each other. If we could have, which I believe is a good speaker, Mr. Boehner, who wanted to do a bipartisan compromise with a good president, President Obama, then follow the debt commission, we will give certainty to it. And by the way, as you well know, that the health care bill actually decreased small businesses' health care costs beginning this year with a 30% tax reduction, tax credit, and 50% for beginning in 2014. So they've actually decreased the corporate.
Congressman Sestak, I think you're glossing over how Obamacare is going to hurt small business and business in general. Most of Obamacare doesn't kick in until 2018. So there is no certainty out there for those small businesses. And that's why they can't get access to capital, because they don't know what their long-term costs are going to be 4 to 5 years down the road. I do agree with you that Congress and the White House does have to come together, but I don't think the White House is honestly looking in the mirror and being honest with its role in this. Well, and I do think that in all certainty, they've got to stop proposing regulations that are crippling growth.
Well, man, oh, man.
I do have just one last thing, Eric. Yep. I just want to make sure the fact is out there. The entire Obamacare goes in, as you well know, in 2014, with the exception that in 2018, the only change that happens that year, as Ford probably does know, is that instead of the government paying from the federal side 100% of all the changes in Medicaid, it goes down to about 90%. That's the only change, and that's in law. So actually, it is out there.
All right, well, you know
Eric,
what?
I thank you for the opportunity just to say the facts.
Well, we got to do something. Someone's got to get together down there to deal with the economy.
That's absolutely right. And I do want to agree with Joe that Congress, and particularly the Republicans in the House, need to really step up and propose it. But in all honesty, the White House has got to get serious about this.
Step up. Both sides. Everybody step up. That's the message this morning. Forward and
that is the message.
So much. Okay.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you.